The champagne flute shattered in my hand, a jagged scream of glass slicing through the laughter of the reception hall. Blood trickled down my palm, warm and slick, but I barely felt it. Across the room, my wife, my Clara, stood radiant in her wedding gown, her smile a blade twisting in my chest. She hadn't noticed me yet, hadn't seen the way my world collapsed under the weight of a single photograph slipped into my pocket by a stranger moments ago. A photograph of her, tangled in sheets with a man I didn't know. Timestamped 2 weeks before our vows. The hall buzzed with clinking glasses and murmurs of joy. Fairy lights casting a golden glow over silk-draped tables. I stood frozen by the bar, my tuxedo suddenly too tight, the air thick with the scent of roses and betrayal. Clara's laughter rang out, sharp and melodic, as she leaned into her maid of honor, whispering something that made them both giggle. Had she always laughed like that with others? Or was I just now seeing the edges of her I'd ignored for years? We'd met in a rain-soaked bookstore, both reaching for the same tattered copy of Wuthering Heights. Her fingers brushed mine, and she'd smiled, an unguarded, crooked smile that made me believe in fate. 3 years later, I proposed under a sky bruised with storm clouds, promising her forever. She'd said yes, tears in her eyes, and I'd thought it was love. Now, staring at her across this glittering room, I wondered if those tears had been something else entirely. The photograph burned in my pocket. I'd noticed the small things, her late nights at the office, the way her phone was always face down, the perfume that wasn't hers clinging to her scarf. I'd told myself it was stress, that her new promotion demanded more of her time. I'd painted her silences as exhaustion, her distance as independence. But the truth was a splinter under my skin, impossible to ignore now. "James, you okay?" My father's voice cut through the haze. He stood beside me, his gray eyes sharp with concern, his weathered hand resting on my shoulder. He'd never trusted Clara, had called her too polished the first time they met. I'd laughed it off, chalking it up to his old-school skepticism. Now I wondered if he'd seen something I hadn't. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice a gravelly whisper. My hand trembled as I shoved the broken glass onto the bar, ignoring the bartender's worried glance. "Just dropped my drink." He didn't buy it. His gaze flicked to my bloodied hand, then to Clara, who was now swaying on the dance floor with her father. "You sure about that?" he asked, his tone low, probing. I couldn't meet his eyes. Instead, I pulled the photograph from my pocket, its edges crumpled from my grip. I handed it to him without a word. His face hardened as he studied it, his jaw tightening until I thought it might crack. "Who gave you this?" he demanded, his voice a low growl. "Some guy. Didn't see his face. He just slipped it to me and left." My throat burned, the words tasting like ash. Said he thought I should know. My father's silence was worse than any outburst. He folded the photograph and tucked it into his jacket, his movements deliberate, like a man loading a gun. "Stay here," he said, his voice cold enough to freeze the room. Before I could protest, he was gone, weaving through the crowd with a purpose that sent a chill down my spine. I turned back to Clara. She was laughing again, her head thrown back, her auburn hair catching the light like fire. I wanted to storm across the room, to demand answers, to shake her until the truth spilled out. But my feet wouldn't move. Doubt not at me. Maybe the photo was a lie, a cruel prank. Maybe she'd explain it away, and I'd be the fool for believing a stranger over my wife. But then I saw him, the man from the photograph. He stood near the edge of the dance floor, his dark suit blending into the shadows, watching Clara with a hunger that made my stomach lurch. He was older, maybe mid-40s, with a sharp jaw and eyes that gleamed with something possessive. I didn't know him, but I knew that look. It was the way I'd once looked at her. My father reappeared, his face a mask of controlled fury. "That's him," he said, nodding toward the man. "Paul Grayson. Works with Clara." I asked around. The name hit me like a punch. Paul. Her mentor at the firm, the one she'd mentioned in passing, always with a casual shrug. "Just a colleague," she'd said when I'd asked about the late-night calls. I'd trusted her. God, I trusted her. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the music. My father's eyes darkened. "What needs to be done?" Before I could stop him, he was moving again, his steps purposeful as he approached Paul. I followed, my heart pounding, the room tilting around me. The music swelled. A slow waltz that felt like a mockery of the moment. Clara was still dancing, oblivious, her smile a lie I couldn't unsee. My father didn't hesitate. He grabbed Paul by the arm, pulling him into a quiet corner near the banquet hall's entrance. I caught up just in time to hear the low, venomous edge in my father's voice. "You think you can ruin my son's life and walk away?" he hissed, his grip tightening. Paul's face paled, but he didn't pull away. "It's not what you think," Paul said, his voice smooth, practiced. "Clara and it was a mistake. A one-time thing." "A mistake?" I interrupted, my voice shaking with rage. Heads turned, and I felt the weight of curious eyes. Clara was still on the dance floor, but her laughter had stopped. She was watching us now, her expression unreadable. "James," she called, her voice cutting through the music as she hurried toward us. The crowd parted, sensing the storm brewing. "What's going on?" I couldn't speak. The words lodged in my throat, choking me. My father stepped forward, pulling the photograph from his jacket and holding it up for her to see. "Care to explain this, Clara?" he asked, his voice deadly calm. Her eyes widened, her breath catching. For a moment, I thought she'd deny it, spin a story to save herself. But then her shoulders sagged, and the mask she'd worn all night crumbled. "James," she started, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just, I was lost, and Paul was there." "Lost?" I spat, the word tasting like bile. "We were planning our life together, Clara." "Our life?" Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. The room seemed to shrink, the lights too bright, the music too loud. I wanted to scream, to tear the world apart, but all I could do was stand there, my heart splintering. My father's voice cut through the haze. "You called me not family when I warned you about her," he said, his eyes locked on Clara. "You said I didn't belong in your world. But this." He gestured to the photograph, then to me. "This is my son. My blood. And you don't get to break him." Clara flinched, but she didn't look away. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I love you, James. I do." The words were a knife, twisting deeper. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her. My father's hand found my shoulder again, steadying me as the room spun. "Let's go," he said softly. "You don't need this." As we walked out, the photograph fell from my hand, fluttering to the floor like a dead leaf. Behind us, Clara's sobs echoed, but I didn't look back. The night air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp, and I realized the truth. Love could lie, and trust could bleed. But family, real family, would burn the world down to protect you.